And now that we know a little bit more about how code is structured in TIA Portal, let's open up the PLC Code Editor and talk about its navigation. So to open up the PLC Code Editor, again, you're just going to double click on either an OB, an FC, or an FB. The PLC Code Editor has several parts to it. Up here at the top we have a menu bar with several icons. These first two allow you to add and delete a network. These over here allow you to change your display settings. Here is where you can find problems, and here's where you can correct block inconsistencies. These two icons over here we'll go over in a later video. The first one allows you to compare the code you have here in your software versus what's actually running in the PLC. And this button here allows you to monitor your code. Below that, we have a area where we can declare our inputs and our outputs for functions and function blocks. We also have this for organization blocks, but you typically don't use it for OBs. Below that is a menu bar with our favorite instructions. You can customize this to whatever instructions are the ones that you use most often. Below that is our actual PLC editor, and this is what contains all of our code. Below that is our inspector window where we can view the properties of this piece of code. Usually when you are programming, you'll be on the info tab where you can look at your compilation results as well as cross-references. Over here on the right we have our instruction set. All the instructions for the PLCs can be found here. Our PLC code is arranged into groups called networks. What a network is a container of code that you can organize based on function, and a network can contain multiple rungs. To add a new network, you can come down here to the bottom and click on your new network icon. Alternatively, you could press Ctrl R. With an empty network available, we can type in code by using our favorites bar up here and either dragging the code into the logic or simply clicking. We can also pull in our instructions here from our instruction set. For instance, if I wanted to add in another normally closed contact, I can do it this way as well. On this network, we have a single rung network. To add another rung, I click on the front of the network and then add a open branch. From there, I can put in my instructions. You can make a branch around an element by clicking to the left of it and selecting the open branch command. Add an instruction, and then you can either hit close branch or click and hold on this double arrow and drag it to where you want it to be. As I mentioned, all of our instructions that we can use in our ladder logic can be found here on the right in our instructions task card. The instructions set is divided into a few parts. At the top we have our basic instructions, and this will include things like your bit logic, your timers, counters, and so forth. Extended instructions are used to work with more complex data types, such as dates and strings. This is also where you can do things like alarm handling. The technology folder is where we can find instructions used for PID control or motion control. And communication is where we can find instructions used to talk to other devices. If I want to find a certain instruction, I can go into my search bar here and type in the instruction I'm looking for. For instance, if I want to add two numbers, I can type in add, hit enter, and it will take me to that instruction. I could then drag it over to a network and work with it. Alternatively, if I know the name of my instruction, I can click on this empty box icon and type the name. You may have noticed that some of these networks have these red X's on them. This is because TIA Portal will let you know if a network will encounter a compilation error when you compile it. What the error would be is that none of our instructions have any tags assigned to them. That's what this question mark means. These question marks indicate that a tag needs to be assigned to this instruction. In order to assign a tag, we can do that several ways. For instance, if I want to define a brand new tag, I can just type the name of my new tag, I'll call it my new tag, and hit enter. You'll see that it has a red underscore. That's to indicate that it hasn't been defined yet. To do so, I can right click and then say define tag. Next, it's going to ask me where I want to store it. Here, I can indicate whether I want to put it to my memory, make it an input or an output. In this case, I will save it to my memory. Automatically, it will find an address that is not being used to store this new tag. Also, based on how I'm using that tag, it will know what data type to make it. Finally, I have the option to decide what tag table I want to store it in. Then I can give it a comment. If everything looks good, press define. And you'll see that now that new tag is defined, our question marks are gone, and my new tag now has this address of m21.6. Now, if I want to use one of my actual inputs, I can do so by going over to my project tree and then finding the input of my choice. For instance, if I'm going to be going off of a remote I/O rack, I can find my remote I/O system and then click on, say, my digital input card. From there, I can take that tag and then add it to my program. And the same holds true for my outputs. Notice that my inputs have this I address, my outputs have a Q address, and my memory tags have an M address. Therefore, if I wanted to refer to them later, I can just type in their address instead of their whole name. Of course, if I type in their symbolic name, you'll see that Portal automatically will find all the tags that match what I'm typing. So from there, I can find what I want to add and double click on it. I can move tags around by clicking and holding and dragging to another element. I can copy tags by holding down the control key while I drag. If I would like to add a tag from a data block, I can do so by coming up to my data blocks here in my project tree, finding the data block of my choice, and then here in the details view, I can take one of the tags and drag it over. If I would like to define a variable within a data block, I can do so by opening up my data block, coming up here to where it says add row and pressing, and then giving it a name. So I'll call this one my bit. I'll give it the data type of a Boolean so I can use it on a normally open contact, and I'll have the start value be false. Now, if I go back into my program, I can add this tag by either dragging it in like I did before or typing my DB, pressing enter, and then selecting my bit. If I try to add a variable with a data type that does not fit the instruction, for instance, if I try to add my dint, which is a double integer, into a coil which expects a Boolean, you'll see that when I click away, that the text will show up in red, indicating that this is the wrong data type. So to fix this, I'm just going to add in a tag that I know is a Boolean. And when I click enter here, you'll see that my X goes away on my network, and this is good to compile. To compile your entire program, you can do that by clicking on the compile icon here under the menu bar. When I do this, it's going to go through my PLC and find any errors. You'll see that in the code we have quite a few errors, and when it comes across an error, you get what network it's on, a description of what went wrong, and then this, a go to button. So if I click that go to button, it's going to highlight and it's going to say that the operand requires an input or an output, which is missing. So let's talk about deleting a network. To delete a network, right click on the network title and then press delete. Now I'll compile again and see what else I need to fix. Over here on network 2, it says that my DB has not been compiled. Right here. And it will say that when I make changes to a data block. To compile that data block, I can right click on my DB, go to compile, and then click Click. Now if I click into my PLC program and press the compile button again, you'll see that everything was compiled successfully. Be careful. You can filter out your errors, your warnings, and your notifications by these buttons here. So it's good practice to make sure that all of these are selected. It's worth pointing out that if you use this compile button up here, it will only compile whatever you last selected. So if I select something here in my PLC code and then press compile, it will compile this code. However, if I click on, say, this function and then press compile, it will only compile that one function. If I scroll up to the top and press compile on my PLC1, then it will actually compile the whole PLC, both the hardware and the software. Notice now that my compilation results are much different than what they were before, and that's because when I did the PLC compile, it compiled every single function and function block and found errors in them. It's important to note that you will not be able to download to your PLC until all these errors are corrected. In later videos, we're going to show you what it looks like to go online and monitor your code, as well as modifying your variables. In the next part, we're going to go over the HMI screen editor.